Welcome to BSP TV. Today, I've got Katie Richards from Law on Earth. Law on Earth is a really unique platform that's going to help people revolutionise how they use lawyers. But first, we'll talk a little bit with Katie to find out more about you and where you come from. So, hey, Katie, how are you?
I'm well, thanks, Kevin, and you?
I'm good. So, hey, it's Are You OK Day. So, are you okay?
I'm fabulous.
Excellent. Because I do know last week you hurt yourself. And you just confessed to me you hurt yourself in warm-ups. You weren't even fully, you weren't going hard. You warm-up injury.
That's right. Yeah. I didn't even make it to the F45 lifting exercises. I was just sitting on the floor and I tried to get up and did my back. I think that's just being 40.
Always best laid plans. So we asked in the group last week, what were the top legal documents that they needed, and we got inundated with a whole range of requests.
Yeah, we did. Look, we had everything from employment agreements to partnership agreements, joint ventures. A lot of people were looking at doing their wills. So we thought we'd just have a look at some of the most asked for documents among those groups and have a bit of a chat around those. But also keeping in mind that, we actually do have all the documents that were requested in the platform for people to have a look through and learn a bit more about news as and when they actually do need them.
Now, the first, I want to cover a couple of myths and get your input on a couple of myths that were there. One person said, look, I wouldn't trust anything that wasn't produced by a lawyer sitting right in front of me. So what does Law on Earth actually do?
Okay, so look, Law on Earth is actually a self-service legal platform. That's all the documents inside there have been generated by my team of lawyers in Virtual Legal and by other lawyers from other law firms as well. So what that means is for someone that's using the system, they can actually go into the Learning Centre. They can learn a little bit about the type of legal issue that they're dealing with. That's 100% free. So you set up a free profile. You can go into the free Learning Centre and learn, and there's no catch. You don't have to subscribe to anything. Even when you actually want to use a document, you can actually go into the document wizard and work and choose the correct document and then answer questions about your particular situation. The system will slot in the right clauses. You don't need to choose them. It'll actually know what needs to be in your legal agreement based on simple answers that you give. Now, what it also does is that it will give you, alongside your legal document, it will give you what's called a human guide. Now, the human guide goes through every clause in that agreement and it gives a really simple answer about what each clause actually means. So what that means is that you don't have to keep running back and forth to the lawyers all the time, and you actually have complete control over your document, not only now, but if you want to change different things about that agreement in the future, you know what each clause actually means, so you know which ones need changing. And it also means that down the track, if you had a dispute with someone regarding this agreement, you also don't have to run off to the lawyers straight away, because you can actually look at it yourself and think, okay, well, can I negotiate out of this position, given that I actually understand what clause that they're unhappy about. And then if you do want to get advice, there are lawyers in the platform that can give you the 20-minute advice sessions up to an hour and actually go through your documents, redraft right there in front of you on the screen.
Because that was the next question I was going to say, because you don't know what you don't know. Okay, so and if we're entering we might have a memorandum of understanding and things, and we might be trying to do that, but we don't know what we don't know, so we don't know what risk could potentially be on the other side of that, where we might want to have just a quick chat with a lawyer to go, have I got myself covered?
Yeah, that's right. So what we're seeing a lot of, Kevin, is that people are actually getting the agreement prepared in the way they think that they want it done, then booking one of the $97 advice sessions with us. And then we're actually going through, turning the screen around so they can see what we're doing. And as we're talking to them, we're redrafting different clauses in the agreement. That's then stored on their dashboard so they can watch that again later. And our insurance attaches to that, of course. But then they can go and give that to the other person. The other person says, no, look, I want this clause changed and that clause changed. They can then come back, book another legal advice session and do that. So the difference is that when you're doing a document drafting with a law firm, generally speaking, you're probably looking at around the $1,000 mark to get a document done. And the more you negotiate back and forwards, obviously the more you pay. And that's all well and good, and you need to do that back and forwards. But if you actually are only paying $97 for every 20-minute session that you do, instead of just paying $1,000 straight from day one, you can actually keep your costs down a lot lower. You are in more control of your costs because you're in control of your document.
And a lot of small business owners actually avoid legal documents because they are so bloody expensive right from the very start. They don't have $1,000 to spend here, there, and everywhere. And by the time they've invested $1,000, it becomes $1,500 or $2,000 within a heartbeat. And this is why so many small business owners kind of wing it and hope that they're not going to be at risk, as opposed to getting the proper documentation.
Yeah, we actually see a lot of people that will Google the type of document they think that they need. Like one that people use a lot is an NDA. So they'll actually need a deed of release, or they'll need an employment agreement or something else. And all they have is an NDA, and it's got some other company's name on it. It's an American document. It's got different legislation. The good thing about using the platform is the fact that every piece of information, every advisor, it's all geotagged. What that means is that you're not able to get the wrong document for the area that you're in, because the laws change from area to area. And if you have the wrong law applying to your agreement, sometimes you're actually contracting out of rights you would have already had if you didn't have an agreement at all. So you have to be a bit careful.
Fantastic. Now, different documents that people were talking about, and this was really interesting, wasn't it? Because we've just asked, hey, what legal documents do you need? And the top answer came up as wills.
Yeah. I know, yeah. I think that I have got a few schools of thought around that. I think maybe with all the stuff that has been going on around the COVID, issues, people are actually paying a lot more attention to, do I have my affairs in order if anything ever were to happen to me or my family? So I guess it's just become a lot more live issue. The other side of that too is that, like the wills that people have been using in the platform too are the ones that have the testamentary trust in them. Now, to be able to get that kind of document, majority of the time, you're going to pay absolutely in excess of $1,000 to get a will with the testamentary trust. But at the end of the day, and you can get the legal advice, as much legal advice on it as you want through the sessions. And that's with, real lawyers that do this day in, day out. The actual document clauses, it's not that more complicated than a standard will. So if anyone was going to go with a standard will, I would say to them, go with the will that has the testamentary trust, because that would allow the executors to actually delay payment. So if someone's going through a divorce or a bankruptcy, then they actually have the ability to say, don't give me the money that's owing to me under the will right now, otherwise it won't go to me. Let me have it in a future time when I'm ready for it. So that's sort of why I think that will with the testamentary trust came up so often.
Cool. Another one was partnerships.
Yeah, that's right. So people sort of go down the partnership route, and sometimes they'll just want to have like a joint venture, or maybe they're actually going into a company and needing a shareholders agreement. Look, everything's actually in the platform. They can use each of them. But if you're not sure about what kind of structure that you should be using, I would always recommend do your 20-minute advice session first. Talk to someone. Also speak to your accountants. Accountants are really critical when it comes to your structuring from a taxation perspective, if nothing less. But, it's good to have those conversations early, because there can be some fairly significant tax consequences if you have to change structure down the track. And we do see that a fair bit, especially from sole trader into a company. We see that quite a bit as well.
And speaking of areas where your accountant needs to get involved, and a lot of people were talking about employment or independent contractor agreements. And obviously, here's somewhere where the first port of call definitely, absolutely, without a question of a doubt, has to be your accountant, because the tax office are really specific about their definition of what an employee is and what an independent contractor is. If you get that wrong and you're paying someone as an independent contractor, and the tax office, or worst, WorkCover, decide that they weren't an independent contractor, they were your employee, then you could be up for hundreds of thousands of dollars in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's right. And, also you'd be up for the super for the independent contractor as well. There are some critical things that you can do to try and minimize the likelihood of an independent contractor being seen as an employee. But, I would probably get advice around that if you can. But, if you have clauses in your employment agreements that are saying, you can't work for anyone else but us, look, it's understandable, because you don't want someone that has, your trade secrets working for a competitor. But just keep in mind also that if you've got that in an independent contractor agreement, it's going to come across as them being an employee. So you may end up getting caught in that trap. So definitely get advice around that before you do that. There are both the independent contract agreements and employee agreements in the platform. They do have the employment agreements have got the information statement on them. So you're required under the employment legislation to make sure you're giving your employees information statement. So you can't forget it on this one because it's actually already attached to the document. But yeah, make sure you get advice before you go into that.
Fantastic. Terms and conditions were also really common.
Yeah, that's right. So terms and conditions obviously are the rules by which people are going to engage with you in your either online business or in a business that's not online, in terms of if they're going to give you information about, obviously their personal details, you have to make sure your privacy policy is also attached to your terms and conditions. That's really important. But also make sure your systems are actually confidentially keeping that information too. You can't say, this is our privacy policy, stick it on the website and then not use secure systems and processes. But the terms and conditions, especially for an online business, you need to go through things like, when the risk in the products that you're going to send out is going to pass. Because otherwise, if you post something out and then it goes missing in the mail, who's liable for that? Who's responsible for the cost in replacing it? So they're the kind of things that you need to cover off. There are also the Australian consumer law statements, mandatory statements that are meant to go into contracts and your terms. So we go through all of those in our policies as well. So you won't have to worry about it. It's all in there. And one of the things that we added in recently, Kevin, was a lot of people are going down the membership path. So they're sort of having people log on. We've actually created a section where you can say, are you going to have a membership? And you just said yes, and it puts all the membership clauses in there. So you've actually got all that covered off. And of course, by the time you actually answer these questions about how your business works, you can essentially just give that to the lawyers, upload that, and then they can reverse the screen and you can tell them the things that are particular to your business. And then they can just redraft different clauses to make those terms and conditions perfect for you. So it might cost you, say, a couple of $100 to get your terms and conditions done, as opposed to $1,500. Especially in times like now, money in your pocket's better than sending it into a place where you don't necessarily need to put it into.
Absolutely. Within your terms, I also imagine that there would be default clauses and that sort of stuff, and in relation to non-payment of debt and all that sort of stuff. And yes?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah. So we cover up all of that. And one of the things we tried to do as well is we tried to make sure that, say, where you're using like a client agreement or even your independent contractor agreement. Now, when we're drafting these documents on our end, we don't know whether you're going to be the independent contractor or you're going to be the business owner. So what we've done is that we've given the option for people to choose, say, in the liability clauses, whether it's in favor of the contractor or in favor of the business owner or equal liability. So that way, no matter who's actually creating this document, you have the ability to make it in your favor by just selecting the right clauses at the end.
Fantastic. Safety policies. We've been talking about safety policies, and particularly when with a lot of people working remotely from home these days, and this is quite new for a lot of businesses, and particularly a lot of small businesses. It's one of the benefits that came through from COVID, if we can say there were any benefits that came through from COVID, was that, in fact, a lot of small businesses worked out they didn't need an office. And all of a sudden they're saving, between $5,000 and $25,000 a year that previously they were spending on office space, but they've got all their employees working from home, which has changed the whole dynamic. And all of a sudden, their safety policies have been outdated in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that's right. So even those people working from home, you as the employer actually still have the liability to make sure they're working in a safe environment. Now, how do you do that all the time? Who knows? Because if you actually can't travel to their home, you may not actually be able to see what's going on there. So some of the things that we recommend to do is actually understand the environment that each of your employees are working in, because you will be liable if something goes wrong and it's still within their course of work. So obviously, if they're swinging on the clothesline, you're probably okay with that because that's outside their work, even though it's at their home. But if they're sitting at their desk and they don't have a chair that's supportive of their, of their working, posture, or they don't have good light, you could be liable for things like this. The best thing to do is actually create some kind of process of how you can check these things, and then say, okay, look, we want to go down the path of saying, okay, we will check what you're doing and we'll supply you with the equipment. Or you could sort of say, okay, well, you set up the way that you feel most comfortable. And if you have issues with the way that you're structured at your desk, make sure you let us know straight away, and we'll do whatever we can to support you and get you into a better position. But all those things are good to have documented in a safety policy. And one thing that we're going to do over the next couple of days is actually create a safety policy that can go into the platform, given we got a few people that have asked for it now in the last couple of days. So we're going to create one and put it into the platform that'll give you the options to actually be able to select just how much effort you want to go to as a business owner in helping these employees with different safety concerns and ergonomics, so that you don't have to say, okay, well, this is what the safety policy says, so I must now do this as the employer. You just have to make sure whatever you choose out of those clauses and options, number one, you're still protecting the employee, you're showing that you're actually making an effort to check on their ergonomics, and that you can actually comply with your own systems that you're saying are in the safety policy. So obviously you can't have something that says, oh, we're going to do all these things, but we actually don't end up doing those. So that'll go in probably in the next couple of days. So if people do actually want some kind of safety policy to go alongside their employment agreements, by all means, you should be able to find that shortly.
Fantastic. Did we talk about privacy?
We have momentarily touched on the privacy stuff for when people are getting information coming through on their website. So if you're getting details of people using your contact us page, perfect example. There are some websites where they're actually not collecting any information, say like landing pages. If you only have a landing page and you're not actually collecting any private information, you may not need a privacy policy, attaching to a landing page. But if you are collecting names, phone numbers, emails, you really should have a privacy policy on there.
Absolutely. I think we've touched on just about everything, haven't we?
I think so, yeah. One thing we're noticing recently too is a lot of people are getting interns. And so if you are going to go down the path of getting interns, that safety policy would probably be one of the important documents as well. There are obviously a lot of different rules around, what you need to do when it does come to having interns. You could either get a legal advice session around it to make sure that you've got things right from your end and you're giving them the kind of work that you're meant to give them. There were some issues in the previous years with people using interns a little bit like slavery, which is not okay. But look, there'll be information in the Learning Centre about that. And just as long as you've got the right documentation to support it as well.
Which is fantastic. Now, you've got a special deal for anyone who's a member of our business portal.
Yeah, that's right. Look, one of the things that we wanted to do is give 2 free legal documents away. We figured, one free legal document sort of may get you, say, your terms, but if you have 2, you can have your terms and your privacy policy, or there's even the partnership agreements. There's no restrictions around what type of document you can get. So it might be a nice simple one, or say, the partnership agreement, so multiple pages long. And so we'll make sure that your guys have got that 2 free docs free link so they can go in. All they would need to do is put the code into their membership profile under the voucher code section. So when you set up your free profile, just go into the member profile section in the right-hand corner of the screen and go to the voucher code, put that code in, and then even though it will still ask you to set your full account up using the credit card, it won't charge your credit card. So it's just the way that it sets the system up. But yeah, you'll get those 2 free documents for whatever you want.
Fantastic. And you have special rates for depending on what support people are looking for and all that sort of stuff. And as we said, it comes up a fraction of the cost of picking up the phone and calling your lawyer.
Yeah, that's right. What we're finding so far is that it saves about 90% of the cost that we're seeing. Say for a shareholders agreement, a lot of people are charging anywhere between $2,000 and $2,500 for a shareholders agreement, where obviously you can download it in the platform and then go and get legal advice on it, and you're going to spend maybe $200 getting exactly the same document. And how much legal advice that you want and need depends on you as an individual. You don't necessarily have to pay this bulk amount for something, and you're getting a lot of the lawyers from the public. It's not just my lawyers. This is a software platform, and each lawyer that you deal with, their own insurance will attach to the work that they do for you. So you know that you're covered and you're getting the same product that you would get from an actual law practice.
And that's a really important point, that you have a suite of law firms that are working in conjunction with you in relation to this. It's not just one self-enclosed platform. It's all about us. It really is about a community of lawyers that are working together to provide, quality advice at the price a small business can afford.
Yeah, that's right. And the thing is, Kevin, there's about 75% of Australia that can't or believe they can't, afford lawyers. And this is 2020. We're a first world country. It's ridiculous that, there isn't something that's safe and also available, accessible for everyone. And especially in times like COVID, we all have to band together and make sure that there is access so people can actually get legal advice on so many different things, not just documents, even, like leasing, and you've got your landlord's not cooperating with you, then you can use the platform to get advice on whatever it is that you need, and not even just in business. It's like we said before, your wills or your family law. There's lawyers right across the board, trademarks, whatever it is. But it is better to not put your head in the sand and just reach out, do an initial advice call, see whether you can actually get help or not.
And that's it. You can actually upload an agreement that you've got from someone else and book a session with one of the lawyers to give you 20 minutes of advice for the $99.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, a couple of days ago, I did a couple of the LawPath precedents. And so someone came to us to actually get the advice. It was actually going to be cheaper for them to come and get an hour's worth of advice from us than get one of the documents reviewed by one of the lawyers in the quoting system from LawPath. We're more than happy to help out. Like, the whole purpose for the system being set up was to try and address that access to justice problem that 75% of Australia is having. So it's like, it doesn't matter where your contract's coming from. If you need help, then we'll facilitate it.
Fantastic. Look, thanks very much for your time today. Thanks for explaining more about Law on Earth. We'll make sure that you get up on the system and all that sort of stuff, and that we start helping our members find you more easily, because it is such a valuable opportunity for people who are looking for independent advice.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks so much, Kevin. I appreciate the opportunity to chat.
No, thanks very much. I'll catch you soon.